Hi, my name is Gail, and we're glad that you are joining us on this follow-up webinar with Christina. We encourage everybody to contribute to the conversation and pose questions. You can do that two ways. You can put a question in the chat, or you can use your mic. So you can unmute yourself, but just please mute yourself again once you're done talking so we don't get a lot of feedback. There's also closed captioning at the bottom if you need to take advantage of that. And there's the CC button in the lower toolbar to turn on that transcription. All right, so we don't waste any time. Christina, I'll turn it over to you. You're muted though, Christina.
Well, that's just perfect.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's good to see you again. How far are you into your school year right now? Where are you? Did school just start? Has it? This was day 12. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So you're in the thick of it. Are you exhausted? Yeah. Yeah. We start class. We have our first day of classes tomorrow. So I'm still in the trying to get everything ready, anxious, like have a little bit of a stomach ache phase of it. Still get a stomach ache, which is crazy after almost 30 years. So we are going to get rolling, but I would love for you, if you wouldn't mind, to say your name and where you teach and the grade you teach. So if you wouldn't mind just unmuting yourself, you don't have to show yourself on the screen if you don't want to. And if you'd rather use the chat, you can do that as well. But I'd love to hear your name, where you teach and what you teach. So we can start with, let's start with Katie. Would you mind getting us rolling since you popped into the chat?
Yeah, sure. I'm Katie Driver. I teach second grade at Selma Elementary, which is just a small county school east of Muncie.
Okay, thanks. About Jessica or Alana?
Hi, I'm Alana. I work at the IEPRC, so I am like a consultant, but I do, I have experience at middle school. I was a special education teacher for 17 years at the middle school. So I wanted to see elementary, some stuff so that I could help be kind of an instructional coach for that. So this is a great.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, thank you. How about Katie? Katie Mosley?
I can go. I'm Jessica.
Okay, hi, Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. Hi. I work at Indiana IEPRC. Special education is my background, behavior, and just really enjoyed when we saw you earlier this summer, and I'm excited to see these follow-up sessions.
Some great, thank you. Matt, the IEPRC consultant. Good to see you again as well. Let's see here, who else? Rosalind.
Hi, Christina and everyone. I'm also with the Indiana IEP Resource Center. I am a data coordinator, and prior to that, I was with the Gary Schools, but not as a teacher, but it's always been in the data. So, in that realm is where I focus on the data.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. What about Alyssa?
Hi, good afternoon. It's good to see you again, Christy. I slipped into the room too. I'm not currently teaching and working with some of my colleagues that are on here, but when I was last in the classroom, it was at the high school level. And so I've always felt like, though I started in elementary, I want to go back and kind of learn a little bit more, reflect on what I did, but mostly to be able to support others that I work with and some of the strategies and such. So I'm looking forward to the elementary conversation.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Patrick. Hello. Okay, we can come back to Patrick. Katie, are you there? Okay, we'll keep going, and if Patrick.
Okay, I'm here. I am so sorry. I was trying to text Jessica. I figured out how to speak. I cannot turn my camera on. I'm using my cell phone, and I've never done Zoom on my cell phone, so I'm trying to figure it out. But I have a middle school background, so 7th and 8th grade English, and I am just interested in the elementary to help other elementary teachers with their differentiation and seeing just how they can best use some of those practices for student learners.
Okay, got it. All right, well, thank you, everyone. So glad that you are here. We are going to get going. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just kind of remind you where we were and where we're headed. And let's see here. There we go. I have to say, I'm kind of grateful that this is not feeling second nature to me anymore. Remember when doing things virtual was like that's the way I did everything. And I'm glad that I have to think about it a little bit, and then it's not natural for me anymore, because that means I get to be in person with folks. So, all right. So we are in our virtual phase 3 here. We did day 1. If you remember, we focused a lot on environment and curriculum and interaction, some low prep strategies, and we did formative assessment part 1. Our second day together, we delved a little deeper into formative assessment. We talked about readiness. We talked about interest differentiation, and we dipped our toe in flexible grouping, but we really didn't do more than that. It was probably our little toe, if we're being serious. And so today is kind of looking at flexible grouping, and by doing that, doing a little bit more with interest differentiation, because we really kind of scratched the surface with that, and looking at management as well. But I promise you some sharing and troubleshooting. And so the first thing I want to do is, if you would like to share something you've already tried and how it went, something you're excited to try and why, or something you're hesitant to try and your questions about it, like something you're like, well, we talked about this and I thought it was interesting, but I'm not 100% sure I want to try it, and this is why. So I am going to just, like, if anybody wants to share about that, give you a chance. You can put it in the chat, or you can share out loud. And if you have nothing, then if you say nothing at this time, that would be good, and we will avoid awkward wait time. You can put that in the chat as well.
Can I ask a question or say something? So I am going to be supporting with Marcy and I a team that's going to do co-teaching with a new math curriculum, and it's inquiry based. So they're a little bit hesitant to, I guess it doesn't lend itself to, like, they don't know how to use the co-teaching. So that's kind of like what we're going with that. So the special education teacher maybe doesn't have as much of the content right now. So I don't know. I was thinking about like flexible grouping. I was thinking about how you would give support with that. Do you think, if you have any ideas?
Using an inquiry model?
Mm-hmm. They said it's kind of, the inquiry model instead of kind of, illustrious math. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
That's great. Actually, the inquiry model kind of lends itself to, I think, it kind of frees things up, because it's not so teacher led, that it's easier, I think, to lend support in terms of pulling small groups.
Okay.
And so I think about a teacher that I work with in a science classroom that's inquiry based. She does, she pulls small groups by doing by invitation. Like, I'll do small groups by invitation, but I'll also do like open invitation. And so she does that all the time. Her by invitation groups are groups that she has noticed that they need something, whether that's a push or whether that's an extension. And so she, if they need support with something. her open invitation groups are like, hey, if you're struggling to get your mind around this, or if you ran into trouble with last night's homework, or if you'd like to see another way to do this problem, or if you'd like to see this cool tech tool, and she throws some really fun things into it as well. So it's like, there's no stigma attached to coming up to the teacher. Then that's that. So those are those are her two kinds of groups, but she uses them very fluidly. And so I would say over the course of a week, she works with everybody in a small group that way.
Thank you so much. There was just some questions there. They weren't sure how it lend itself to the co-teaching, but you just answered that. So I have some notes. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I'm going to give you guys in a little bit, I'm going to give you a chance to explore a Padlet that has a bunch of videos and roll cards and blog posts and things like that, where you might find a couple additional examples as well. So, Rosalind, did I check in with you? I did.
Yes, you did. Mhm.
That's right. Yes. Okay, good. Now that you're out of the squares, I've lost my footing.
Sorry about that.
No, that's good. Thanks. That's right. Okay, I remember. Remember your voice. All right. So we are going to, there. Now I remember. There you are. Your pretty hair. Okay. So we are going to, anybody else, something that you'd like to try, something that you have tried and something that you are worried about, like that? That was a great question. Alana, that one.
I can share about something I've tried. So in the past years, I feel like I've done a good job of building relationships between myself and the students, but I haven't done that well, like student to student. The classroom community note catcher is what I kept coming back to when I was trying to make changes this year. And we did fold the line the first couple of days of school and just got to ask some get to know you questions. I teach second grade, so it was pretty simple stuff like, what is the most fun thing you did this summer? And then like, do you have a pet? But some of these kids have known each other for a long time. And then I have a handful of kids who are new to our district. So it was a good chance for them to just start conversations. And truly have already seen how they connect better with one another because of having that opportunity to talk to one another at the very start. So that was awesome.
Oh, that's awesome, Katie. Thanks for sharing that. I know it's a little thing, but it has such good payoff. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I think that is something that is for anybody who's working with elementary students. It seems like they form those connections so easily, especially if a lot of them came from the same neighborhood or something. But I think we do have to be really intentional and not make those assumptions. So to make sure that we're doing purposeful things to connect them to one another in ways that aren't things that just happen naturally. If we waited for just the natural stuff, we'd wait a lot longer for them to bond than we do if we do some of those purposeful things. So. All right. Well, I want to move a little bit further but wait, unless there are any other questions. What are any other questions? Sometimes I shut that down too quickly. Questions, ideas, hugs. All right. Well, this is the model that may look familiar to you, or you may have blocked it from your memory on purpose. It is the model that we work through in terms of how everything fit together. And where we left off was this principle here with flexible grouping and management. And so flexible grouping is mixing up student groupings to spotlight talent and remove the stigma of grouping and to build community. So Katie, what you already described about using fold a line is one way to implement flexible grouping, and you've seen already a payoff of it building community. Alana, when I talked about Emily, who uses the by invitation only and open invitation groups. She removes the stigma of grouping that way by saying like everybody's going to end up working with the teacher in a small group. That's just kind of the way the classroom works. So by using a variety of groupings, we can kind of accomplish all of those goals. So we can group what we talked about in our time together was readiness, interest, and learning profile, but also a lot of community-based groupings. When we're thinking about grouping, we really, go through kind of a pretty analytical process by thinking about like, what's the purpose of this group? Why are we using it? How long is this grouping going to last? Is it going to be quick like the lineup, or like a, by invitation group? Is it going to be longer like an inquiry or a project-based group that lasts for more than a week? What characteristics matter? Readiness, interest, kind of like personal gifts. So I want to make sure I have a leader in every group. Those are the kinds of things we sometimes think about. Composition, should it be like readiness, mixed readiness, like interest, mixed interest? How big? I think that if we've got a teacher that we're working with or who isn't familiar with grouping or doesn't feel good about grouping, if we're going to have groups working independently, not with a teacher, that we want to start with partners or trios. To have a teacher who's not familiar with or comfortable with grouping and say, start right off with groups of 4 or 5, that can be pandemonium very quickly. So it's okay to start small with partners and then move to trios. And when you get comfortable with that, then go back to partners and then have a partner group join another partner group. And that is even a safer move to a quad than starting off with a quad. Having one partner group that's already kind of gelled, join another partner group that's already gelled. That is a much more, there are fewer unknowns when you do that than when you just go straight to a quad. So that's another thing to think about if you're working with teachers who are hesitant about grouping, or if you yourself are hesitant about grouping. And then the last thing that we want to consider is who's going to determine that. And for the most part, it's going to be teacher choice. But even with the thinking about the by open invitation groups that we discussed, that's student choice. And then the lineup can be kind of like chance or randomly. Who are you going to end up with when we fold the line? That's kind of letting the activity decide for you. And if it's a low stakes task that really is, the goal is community building, then that's okay. That's okay. So these are just some of the things that we think about. And a lot of times we do this automatically. We don't even know we're doing it, but these are the factors that come into play when we're planning. And so if you've got a teacher who's really hesitant about grouping, these are things to think about. And I'm realizing now that you don't have these slides. And so I will send these to Marcy and Jolly, and they can make sure everybody who's attended gets a copy of these slides. So you don't have to write everything down or screenshot it. But these are the things that you can sit with a teacher and think about, or if you yourself as a teacher can sit and think about as you think about forming maybe some groups that might last for a little bit longer. Any questions about these little factors? Questions or comments? Okay. We'll keep stretching you out and putting you back into a little thumbnail. All right, I'm going to keep going. If you want to grab me, go ahead. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and say hey, and I will respond to that. I respond to many things.
Christina, can I just? I'm thinking out loud now.
Yes.
Because typically I'm working with teams around student behavior, and the different types of grouping that could really be a way to open or to stretch things. Thinking about selection or size of the group or duration, how long we're going to be in a group together, that may create an opportunity for us to stretch a little more and have students participating in some way a little bit differently than what we might have originally considered. We're only going to do it for 20 minutes, so maybe I can maybe
Yes.
this will work, or we can have a positive experience. So I
Yes.
appreciate this purposeful, thinking through that lens even from the very beginning.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is one thing that I feel like has pushed my exploration of flexible grouping, because in my work with teachers, this has been true. If I hear students say, I don't like my group, or teachers say kids feel bad about the groups, the chances are that the class is not flexibly grouped. They're either not they're probably using one kind of grouping, and that one kind of grouping doesn't suit everybody. But if kids know that, like, hey, I might be in this group right now and it's not my favorite, but tomorrow I'll be in a different kind of group, or tomorrow I'll get to work independently. It's like, this is not a forever sentence. That the pressure of the group kind of fades away, because it's going to change quickly, and it's going to change to be something you like better soon.
And that could be true of the teachers too.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. That's for sure. I mean, that's been me. There are times when I have made groups and I thought, what in the world have I done? And I'm glad this is only going to last for 20 minutes, like you said.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So because when we use flexible grouping, it helps us remember that differentiation is not putting kids into those static groups. And it is also not doing what Carol, frequently refers to the symptom of the bluebirds, buzzards, and wombats, where everybody looks around and says, oh, they must be the students who have everything going for them, and those are the students who don't. If we use flexible grouping, those labels kind of fall away. So this is an example of an elementary teacher's flexible grouping over the course of a month. And he's a teacher that I originally saw on an ASCD video. And I just was so intrigued that I got a hold of him. I tracked him down and had a conversation with him and asked him to explain a little bit more about what I was seeing. And so he talked me through his groups and told me how he was using them. And so this, what you see him use is some like readiness partners for an array task, a math task that lasted like one math block. And then he described that over the course of a month or two, this did not happen all at once. Over the course of a month or two. And he said, make sure teachers understand that this happened over the course of a month or two. Because he said the last thing I want to do is shut teachers down because they think they have to do this all within a week. He had students working in like choice animal research groups. So they might have been looking at they were researching the same animal because they had an affinity towards that. So it was like an affinity group, but he had tiered resources available for them. So they were like, okay, you look at this resource and I'll look at this resource, and then we'll share what we find. So they had a shared topic, but they had resources that fit them. He then had, and to do that, he had to, and I have experienced this as well, you have to have a limited number of animals to choose from, because you can't pull tiered resources for every animal under the sun. So you say you pick 4 or 5 animals to choose from, and then you and your media library specialists can get those tiered resources. When they got into their peer review pairs, he made sure that they were working with students who were on a like readiness as their own, even though they're the same animal, same resource, same readiness level. Then with the last 3 are his literacy groups, and he had 3 kinds of literacy groups. So he had fluency friends, which were like readiness, but he also did smaller things like strategy circles. So everybody was working working independently, and he would pull a small group for a strategy like sequencing that was like different from their overall reading level. It was just it was a smaller thing, and so. Like fluency is one of those bigger skills, but sequencing is kind of something that you just need a little closer one-on-one more teacher-led practice with. And so he did that in his smaller groups. But then he did book clubs where students could pick they would pick around like the same author if he could. He wanted something or the same concept. He always wanted there to be something that was a uniting concept about those book clubs, but he wanted the book clubs to be that just right fit. He said there's something about having a book that's the just right fit that just feels really good, but he still wanted them to be able to choose and have full group conversations. So he tried to do either a common author or a common concept. And when he said concept, it was like friendship or identity or power or connection or community, things like that. Those bigger concepts that we talked about in our day one together back in Indiana. Well, you're still in Indiana. I'm in Virginia, but you know what I mean. In the ballroom. How about that? None of us is in a ballroom right now. So does that make sense? And so you can imagine just kids just working in a variety of, and this lasted very quickly. He did stuff like this array task, like these quick little readiness things for math all the time that were just based on very recent formative assessment data. And the other things maybe took a little bit longer to put together. What questions or thoughts do you have about this? And then he did, of course, what you don't see here is all those random things like, clock partners or fold the line or, just like four corners or things like that. So we're going to look at some of those low stakes things too, because these all had data behind them. All the things I'm showing you right now had data behind them. So let's look at some other things. Now, this is a little progression that I think is helpful to think about when you're thinking about flexible grouping that maybe is not as overwhelming as this. And it's we saw a lot of these different grouping configurations in our time together back in June. And the first one is the proximity partners. It just helps students get used to working together in a low stakes fashion. And so if you've got some teachers who are just resistant to grouping, uncomfortable with grouping, if you yourself are resistant to grouping, or you need a way to use grouping frequently without getting too, crazy, then these are, the turn and talk, your rug partners, your think, pair, share. And if you remember, we did second set partners where the teacher had the students talk to a partner and then use what they learned from that partner, and they turned and they talked to another partner and they said, Rosalind said blah, 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 blah. And they had to repeat what their partner said and repeat it to another. Does that ring a bell for you, that strategy? Yeah, so that is I loved that, they had to summarize what their partner said, use their partner's name in a conversation. There are just so many kind of cool, like social emotional learning things going on in that strategy. Used it in a goals workshop. Go Matt Johnson. Well done. And so that is, so that's those kinds of things that are, they don't take a lot of planning. They don't take a lot of movement. So for teachers who are just starting off, that's a good one, second set partners. Once that feels comfortable and students or teachers are both comfortable with that, we're not going to leave that behind, but we're going to add to our arsenal. This is like a snowball. We gather it as we go. We don't leave stage one. We just add to stage one with stage two with some get moving things. And this increases student and teacher comfort with movement. And so this is where you would do your fold the line like Katie was describing at the beginning of our session here. Or if you've got, did I use cards with you? I don't remember if I had time or not. I have card decks that have emojis on them, and I like to pass those out and then have students get with somebody with the same number, or somebody with the same suit. And because they have emojis, I can say somebody with like a similar emotion. So if one's crying and one's sad, you can get with, just it's a different way to kind of mix it up throughout the day, just to have little conversations. And then you can also do things like this kind of shake and share. I think that's kind of taking the fold the line and turning it into like move down and share your questions. And we did that with our formative assessment ideas together in the group. think that might be, and then compass partners or clock partners or genre partners or whatever makes the most sense for your kiddos to think about ahead of time, because that is one thing on that chart about the purposeful grouping. One of the thing is student choice. What we don't want is to have a student say, okay, everybody choose your partner, and have that's the worst. That's a great moment for many students, and it's like the worst moment for a few students if we haven't thought ahead. And so having them think ahead and plan ahead, and their partner, like choosing 2 North partners. And if we've got a student that we know is going to need some, we can tag in a couple of students to make sure that we have our student who might have some social emotional barricades or barriers to helping them, get along with others. Tap in some students to say, hey, can you be so-and-so's South partner just for these 4 weeks before we change Compass partners, just to make sure that everybody has one, so that when you say, all right, so you get to be with today, we're going to go with you. You get to pick some of the partners that you choose. And so today you're going to work with your South partner. That's a student choice grouping, but it's a student choice grouping that you did proactively so that nobody was left out. And that's super important. Okay, so that was proximity partners, get moving, who's interested. And so those are kind of our low stakes that don't really have any kind of learning attached to them. Any thoughts or questions about those or like aspects of not learn? There's learning attached to all 3 of them, but no readiness, interest, or learning profile attached to them. Anybody have any thoughts about those first 2 stages? Thoughts or questions? Make sense?
Hi. This is Jessica. I'm wondering, like, I was in a school last week and just kind of thinking about how the pandemic's kind of changed the way that our kids are, behaviorally or exposed to appropriate behavior, or how to, function in school. Like, I had one teacher who put all her desks back in the rows and stuff because she was like, they can't handle talking to they can't handle being in groups. So I'm wondering, like, how we know that there needs to be procedures and expectations around these like flexible groupings, but I'm wondering if it's going to take longer to continue to get our kids to follow that expectation and procedure. So, how teachers are sometimes will be like, I can't do this because, like, they try it and then they'll stop because it won't happen, which happens to all of us. But how long should they continue, like, to push at it? Because maybe the kids aren't ready for it. I don't know. Do you kind of see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would say that, to back up, if she had them in tables, then, like, it's okay to be in rows. That's great. You can still do proximity partners. Right. And when that starts to feel better, maybe, you can move your desks into, pairs where there's pairs sitting next to each other, and that kind of becomes the norm. And then they get up and move into, get up and move into quads. Okay, now go back to your seats, and it just, that's a get moving. And also throw in a couple of those, like, fold the line things, where they get into groups and discuss, where you do the lineup, fold them in half.
Yeah. Okay.
And have little prompts for them to discuss that last a really short period of time before they move on to another partner. I think that the low stakes and the low duration of time is super, super important for them to build capacity before we start moving into the bigger groups with high stakes attached to it. And because we do have to teach them how to be collaborative again. And so so I think that her gut to have to maybe back up was right, but that doesn't mean to cease and desist for the rest of the year. It just means build capacity.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, so once they're comfortable with those proximity partners and that get moving, kind of those low stakes, low duration of time things, then we can move into some who's interested stuff. And I think this is really important for this, for a teacher like Jessica just described as well. And you can do this by, if you think back to those, community building, get to know you things, like you can look on here and see that, like I'm looking here and I can see that both of these students here, both Kate and Alex, have video games on their little pie charts here. So I could make a small group of just affinity groups that would last for a very short, like a 10-minute activity. Get into your groups. You are in video games, you are in this, talk about like your favorite video game. Now talk about how a video game is like a cell, whatever it is that you've put them together for, use that to make some kind of content connection. It's short, it's community building, and then it goes away. Or it could be something like this that we talked about, like those low prep interests. They come in, this is their warm up. And then they go to the four corners to share their work. And they're working with somebody after they've already done the problem. So they're not just talking about something, they're sharing their work and checking their math. And then they go work with somebody who did a different problem, but they find that the math is the same. So there's some interest, there's some reason that they are together, and it's because they have a shared interest, but they're working on a commonality there. We looked at this one last time as well. And they could do some peer editing based on somebody with a shared interest. But it is, again, the interest is what binds them together, but they're still working on something that is content-based. This is a little bit more high stakes than what we saw before, because it lasts a little bit longer, but it doesn't have to. Like this example could, again, be 5 to 8 minutes. So that's the who's interested in. If there's anything else. And then we can get into more of the interest-based examples that are in your book in that chapter for elementary. I believe it's chapter 8. Oh dear, I have to grab my book. It's up there. With the raft and the try-mind and the menus. We were going to do a jigsaw, but we did do the jigsaw. Didn't we do the jigsaw? We did the jigsaw. Just didn't last as long as I had envisioned it. But having kids work, they can work alone, but then they can, share what they did. Like whoever worked on the monarch butterfly can work with somebody else, can do some peer editing with somebody who did the same one. And in more of it, like it's another affinity group kind of thing, the life cycle thing. This one, same thing. They could work together on this one. I feel like this, because all the formats aren't writing, they're more visual. They could work together to create them. And then this one, they could work together too. This one is more of an individual one as well. But all of these are those you choose thing. There's an increased investment. They're creating something that is demonstrating learning goals. It's a little bit more investment. This is not where we want to start. We have to do some of these other build capacity things before we say, hey, get into a group and create a, piece of writing or a video or a poster or an infographic. But anytime we do have them get into a group, we do want something produced in the group if it's high stakes. Otherwise, it's an invitation to disaster to just get into a group and discuss with nothing produced in the group. And that's another thing teachers sometimes forget. All right, and then finally, the last stage, it doesn't have to, it's like, this is like after, grouping has become part of the fabric of our classroom, then we can do these using formative assessments. And that's more like what we saw in Justin's class, where he was using data to make his groups. And I even think that this one could come in, stage 4 and 5 are interchangeable for me. I think stage 5 could happen after stage 3. I think that we need this capacity building before we get to these later stages, but I don't think that stage 4 or 5 are necessarily have to come in that order. I think it's just, these are high stakes, these are low stakes. Let's do low stakes before we try some high stakes, if that makes sense. And that's our data-driven things. All right, so I would love to hear, and we're not going to go into rooms because we're basically a room in and of ourselves, but I'm going to put this graphic back up there, and I would love to hear where you as a teacher or where the teachers you work with feel like you are the most comfortable or ready to. You can put that in the chat or you can talk out loud, and it might vary by teacher if you're a coach. Which of those stages do you feel like you're comfortable in? Where do you want to maybe push yourself if you're Katie, or push a teacher if you're a coach? What do you think?
I think in my classroom this year, I have a really high level of remedial students, and I haven't had that in the past. This is only the third year that I've taught elementary school. I taught preschool before this. And so my first thought, even at the very beginning of the year, and even today, as I was talking with our special ed coordinator about what the schedule is for all of my students to get what they need and pull out services and all of that, my thought is like, well, I'm just going to have to group them based on their ability, because I don't like, there's not time in the morning to do anything flexible with all of these kids who, I mean, I have 16 out of my 24 kids who have a pull out schedule. So this is a good reminder for me that there are those low stakes options, that I can combine those into the things that we're doing on a regular basis. And again, because I do want to be really intentional about building my classroom community on purpose, I have to include those things for them when we're able to. And then I also want to help my kids really foster independence, especially partly because some of them are so low as far as their skill levels are. And so I want them to build independence and confidence in what they're doing. So the you choose, I think, is really important, so that they are feeling like they're involved and they have a say in the groupings that they're in. And there are still going to be times where we've got to be grouped by levels, because I have kids who are learning letter sounds and phonics skills that other kids have figured out. So, there is some of that still too. But it's a good challenge just to remember to combine all of it, basically.
Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I am absolutely in favor of the, data-driven groups. Absolutely. We need them. Otherwise our kids aren't going to grow. I think that you are what you said about like building the other things into the stuff you're already doing to make it so that those, like to build agency and to build like confidence, so that those aren't that's beautiful. I think you just summed it up beautifully by saying it that way. Like you're building agency and you're building confidence so that those data-driven groups they don't become their identity. Yeah. That's awesome. I hope that, and I hope for coaches that this is something that you could sit with teachers and say, where do you feel like you could be comfortable? Like if you work with a variety of teachers, then they're going to be teachers at different spots. And there's always a place to jump in with that. And there's examples of many of those things. I think in the books that you guys have, and then this book is also not just, it says impress, but it's out. There's lots of different entry points, definitely. So, and I think you have the websites for those videos are in here in this PowerPoint that you'll get, so you can even show the teacher doing the second set partners for elementary, and doing the it's called like, it says shake and share on the slide, but she calls it traverse talk. But you can show them some teachers in action using some of these low stakes things that I think makes it look and feel a lot less scary.
think having conversations with groups of teachers to kind of see where they are in the concept of flexible grouping is great to do with like a school of teachers, because it would give other teachers just that knowledge that, okay, look, this teacher's doing jigsaw. I'm completely scared of the thought of doing jigsaw because it can be overwhelming, but it gives that more inexperienced teacher an opportunity to maybe go observe in his or her own building to see how that teacher is actively putting it in place. And I just think that that could be so beneficial to many staff.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. You can have like building experts kind of bubble to the surface. Other thoughts or questions?
I just a comment. I do find grouping in elementary school seems more natural for some reason. I was in the middle school, and the middle school is like nobody wanted to group once they got there. I mean, they did it, but it was like really in elementary, just like knowing my son's in 5th grade, like you just go in their classroom, they group all the time, and they kind of are like really good about that. So I don't know, I just feel like I don't know what happens in elementary, but they're more it seems like it. I don't know if you've noticed that, but in the middle school and the high school, it's a lot less frequent as the grouping goes. Not sure why.
Yes. I taught mostly middle and high school. And I taught middle and high school for 10 years. And then I took a job as an instructional coach in primary classrooms. And I was like, first of all, what is this wonder that is happening? Like, everyone's grouping, everyone's like, there's all kinds of wonderful things happening. But like, also like everyone's touching me. That was a new thing. That was new, but that was, oh goodness. Yeah. It was very, it was like, kind of like, wow, this is a whole new world. So I had the other, I had the opposite learning curve. But I loved grouping in middle school. I loved it. It was a way to spotlight talent. Like having like kids in different grouping configurations, like you saw different sides of them that you wouldn't see. Like if you kept them with the same kids all the time, you would only see one side of them. You put them in a different fishbowl, and all of a sudden you saw a whole different set of talents, personality, etc. So I got used to mixing them up a lot. All right. Well, whether you're in middle school, high school, 2nd grade, 4th grade, or with adults, let's be honest, there are some things that you need to worry about in terms of what makes flexible grouping work, the nuts and bolts of it. And the first part of it is like, it doesn't work unless you've done, your kids, knowing them as people, but also it's that, kind of those management tools. So I'm going to show you a couple of them, and then I'm going to let you do some exploring. We're going to come back and talk about it for a little bit. You need to be cognizant of time here. This is a strengths finder chart. I learned about cooperative learning with your enforcer, your encourager, your materials manager. It took me all of five minutes to realize that was a status conveyor. Like you have an enforcer and you have a materials manager. Who's more important in that scenario? And it was, I realized I needed to do other things. And I like the way this teacher did this. I think this is pretty cool. This is this idea, this teacher, you can see that students signed up for 2 or 3, I think, roles. And she explained what each of them was and said that no matter what kind of tasks we do in here, if they are meaty enough, we're going to need these kinds of thinkers and these kinds of talents in the room. And so I'm going to need people who can come up with, if you've got people who can come up with unusual ideas, kind of think outside of the box, Need some people who are really good problem solvers. And I'm not talking just about math. I'm talking about like trying to like noodle through something when something's not working, trying to make it work. Need some people with some really good people skills that can, help out. Like if you've got a friend who's really good at helping if people are in an argument, or really good at, kind of smoothing over a situation. I bet you have some friends that, you look around in this classroom and you're like, wow, they always like ask the question I'm thinking in my head. We need some people like that. We need some people with really good, an eagle eye, people with good eye for detail. They notice things that other people don't seem to notice. And then we need some people with an eye for design. Sometimes that'll be an illustrator, but sometimes it'll just be like thinking about things visually and where we want to put things in the room. So it's not always drawing. And so you'll see that students signed up for like 2 or 3 of those roles. And what happened was students kind of pointed their friends to things as well. So it's not like not just I think I'm an eagle eye, but Bianca, I think you are an eagle eye. You should sign up there. You always notice things that other people don't notice. Sometimes you notice when I wear the same shirt twice in a week. So I thought that was just a really kind of, I don't know, again, a status or confidence building way to get roles. And then when you put people in groups that say, make sure that your eagle eye is looking for these things, make sure that your problem solver is helping you noodle through these things, make sure that your collaborator, your ambassador intervenes if people have more than one idea about how to do step 3. And so that's, the teacher then would have to make very clear connections to these roles. It can't just be a poster that goes up on the wall. Like teachers need to kind of like think about and refer to those roles and use them. So I think that's kind of cool. This was in Justin's room, and that I showed you that diagram from. This is the kinds of things that he had students like sentence frames for having discussions. So if you're going to be working in groups, making sure that kids know how to talk to each other. Another way to go about that is by using a chart like this. In group discussion, we share ideas that help us understand the topic. We give examples to help make our point. We listen to our classmates without interrupting. We use our classmates' names when adding to their ideas. We ask our classmates good questions in order to understand them. And we use our facial expressions and our body language to communicate respect. Very important, no matter how old our learners are, that our facial expressions. This is something that I know I don't have a poker face, so something that I need to remind myself of. So just like an anchor chart that can go up in the room, but again, you have to refer to it and not just hang it so that it looks pretty. One other tool that is maybe a little bit more for big kids, but you might be able to make it work for little ones. And this is like a self-evaluation tool. Did I do my job? Did I share the mic? And did I respect my peers? You might need to reframe some of this and use some icons too. And then once students are used to doing this and they're used to what makes me a good collaborator, then we can start having discussions about our groups. So did we as a team do our job? Did we all share the mic and did we respect one another? But it starts with us. And after we've thought about ourselves first, then we can move to talking about our team. That's just another tool to use. And then just the practical things, like if you're going to have kids move into groups, how are you going to do that? You're going to do this. This is actually, one of the classrooms that I teach in, and I hung, not all that stuff is mine, but I did hang those lanterns in the ceiling. And I've got, this is the first year I did that. I had, I get all of my first year teachers, they send me their pictures. Like my phone is like filled with texts of my first year teachers where they take pictures of their rooms or videos of their rooms, and they all have the lanterns. And I never mention the lanterns. I just use the lanterns. I'm like, I need you to go to the yellow table. You go to the mint table, you go to the purple table. It just became such an easy tool that they picked up on it and said that they needed that in their classroom to move their students into it's just so seamless. But now I actually was teaching in 3 different rooms, so I had to hang them in 3 different rooms. And now I'm teaching in a room on a floor that I've never been on before. So I have to go find my room before class tomorrow and steal my lanterns from this room and go put them in my new room on the 3rd floor. I'm glad you like those. I got this idea from a teacher that I saw in Louisville. Tried to track her down. Her name was Amelia, but I couldn't find her. So I just did them on my own. But yeah, they're my favorite. So, and this John Hostetter, then I want a teacher in my hometown. He works with students who are learning English, but I think anybody who's learning their colors would benefit from having the colors on the actual thing. So that's fun too. And then this teacher that I work with in one of my partner districts did this. She got these at IKEA, I think. And she just flipped them over because she had different kids coming in. All right. So any of those tools that you might use or recommend, we had the hanging lanterns. We had the self-evaluation tools. Oops, wrong way. Self-evaluation tools. We had the anchor charts. And we had the Strength Finder expert chart. What do you think? Any tools that you might use? Use or recommend.
Christina, I really like the anchor charts. Again, thinking through that behavioral lens and some students that need to be front loaded or need to have those reminders, but it's for everyone. It's not just, okay, Lisa, this is for you to remember, how you're supposed to, to behave during this activity. It really lends itself to, like the self-evaluation tool. Everyone can do that.
Yes.
And wouldn't that be a wonderful reminder for a kid that needs to check themselves a little bit, see how they're doing?
Yeah.
To say, hey, yeah, I did this and I did this too.
Yes.
And it's seamless. It's not as if they're being singled out. It's just, this is how we do this here. We always check ourselves.
Yes, exactly. It really needs to be an expectation for everybody, and that there might be some who need some additional guiding, but it absolutely is for everybody because it's a classroom norm.
It's like pre-correction without, having to say anything out loud.
Yes, exactly.
There.
Yes. All right. Oops.
I also really like the skills finder thing. I think that's a great way to recognize the skills that your students have. And I liked that you said that the students helped kind of identify those skills in one another. I think that's huge in building community. And then also you're still grouping, but you still have these really specific things that you're looking for in those groups. So you can say, hey, if you are the whatever, like this is what you should be doing. Here's your verbal reminder, but that's hitting, 6 kids at once. And then I'm just thinking through with my younger kids, how they can do self-assessment without it being something written. And I don't know if this is helpful for anybody else, but one thing that we use semi-regularly is Flipgrid. So they just record a video of themselves and it gets sent straight to me. So they could report a Flipgrid answering a couple of questions of self-assessment. Then they're able to formulate even complete sentences and things like that, because that's a huge thing for 2nd grade. But it's not necessarily written, which some of my lower level kids are really struggling with this early in the year. So that also almost invites a little more creativity, because they just think it's so cool to record themselves on video. So then they get to just be a little bit more involved in that than just sitting down and me writing or my aide writing and listening to their answers. They can just actually express it themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So are you thinking about that, the self-assessment of the doing my job, sharing the mic, or thinking about one of the other things? Was that the one you were referring to, or were you thinking about?
Yes, sorry. And kind of you had that rubric where they could kind of
Right.
fill, well, or like chart, I guess. And so I'm thinking more, to create something that's visual for my students who aren't very good readers yet, and then to be able to just respond on creating a video.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. So use icons and then self-assess with book grid. Good idea. Love that. My dog has lost his capacity for Zoom. By the way, if you're hearing crashing, and my 80-pound dog has decided that the Zoom should be over. It's making a lot of noise. All right. Well, I want you guys to have a little bit of time to do some exploring. So just to look at a few tools. So I'm going to put this, nuts and bolts Padlet in the chat for you to look at. I'm not going to have you spend a ton of time there. But there, if you, once you go there, you'll find the first column is simply just a collection of blogs. So you might want to just bookmark this. You can go back to that later. Then you've got a collection of videos, which some of them are 60-second. Most of them, I think, are the 60-second ones, but a lot of them are big kid ones. So those might not be your favorite thing to look at. Got some discussion roles, got group work rubric. I kind of like these tools for organization. And I like some of these time management things as well. Story starter, side work, just some which I think is in your book, some different timers. So I'm just not going to give you a ton of time, just because not all of these things are as applicable for younger kids as they are for bigger kids. Well, I'm going to give you, let's see, we'll do about 10 minutes, and then I'll check in with you and see how many more minutes you'd like. So can I give you a 10-minute exploration time, and then I'll just check in. Okay, so if you want to mute your mic and your camera and go ahead and do some exploring, you can just click the link in the chat, and we'll come back together. I'll check back in with you at 5:15. All right, come on back whenever you're ready. All right. Anyone see love to hear just a couple people share if there's anything you saw that you think you might use or share.
I like the 60-second videos, but I like the circle, because I watched both the one for the older kids and the one for the little kids. So how you could kind of morph it to fit whatever level that you had. It was real adaptable.
Yeah, very adaptable. Absolutely. And that's, again, another capacity building situation for group work. What else?
I also watched several of the videos. One of the ones that I really appreciated was the one with the social studies teacher talking about norms for small groups. I just thought that was super important. That's something that we talked about in June, but I haven't done a great job of setting that up for my students. So a good reminder for me to go back and talk.
Yeah, Katie, me too. you're frozen now. I'm hoping that you can hear us, but it's a good reminder for me too. I actually have a place on my syllabus that's blank so that we can do the norms, and I have to put that in there. So I don't post the syllabus until after I've done the norms with them, which is a good reminder for me that I have to do that. So that's what happens tomorrow in class. But yeah, super important. Oh. You're back. You're on mute.
Oh, of course I am. I don't know, my Zoom just stopped. Everything else was fine. So just a good reminder to me to go back and make sure that I'm setting up norms with my kids and how do we work in groups and what does that look like? So
yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I was just telling them that I have a blank space on I almost forgot. I have a blank space on my syllabus for the norms. And I almost forgot to erase them from last year to leave the blank space again to do, because I have to do that tomorrow. Like we actually do a whole activity where we come up with them together. So I think it's important no matter how old your students are. So awesome. All right. Well, I want to show you one more thing. Unless there's anybody else find anything they think they could share with folks. That Padlet will stay. That Padlet will stay up there, so can continue to explore if you want to, or share with teachers, whatever you want to do with that. Okay, so one more thing that I wanted to show you that I don't think was on there, or you stop me if it was, but just this. All right, can you see the PowerPoint? I stretched the screen out. Was this on the PowerPoint? How do I know if my groups are flexible? No. Okay. This is just a little self-evaluation tool that if you it's something that you can think about as you try to grow, or as teachers try to grow with their use of flexible groups. There's certain things that the teacher can do, and one of them is, like Katie just said, is to have those norms in place. But posting clear directions using multiple modalities, also what Katie discussed with using Flipgrid, making sure that there are routines in place, and holding high expectations for all students. And then the students will use we can walk around, and this is something you could have like a colleague come in and say, do you see students using names often in conversation? Do they seem to understand being and enjoy being with one another? Do they seem to be able to move efficiently in and out of groups and get materials and use systems to signal and wait for help? Some of those tools on the Padlet had something to do with that. Respond to noise and calls for attention. And then the room. Again, there's the norms, flexible seating, use of space, communicate mechanisms for like the lanterns, supplies that are readily available, mechanisms for sharing work and for monitoring time and progress. So just some some things that as you try to grow, and this is not all going to happen in one day, but over time, over the course of a year or two, just some things to shoot for to grow. One time I was in a conference with Carol Tomlinson. We were presenting to a group of folks from out of the country, and one of the visitors asked, how flexible should my groups be? And she answered, after a month's time, a student should have had the opportunity to be both challenged and to be the challenger. I thought that was just such a nice principle, good rule of thumb, that kind of frees you up to think about students and not, I'm very procedure driven and tool driven. And I just this is a good principle that feels very freeing. But I also then had a conversation very recently with a principal with whom I've worked very closely as we've implemented flexible grouping in her school. And one of her ahas about flexible grouping is this. In a powerful and productive way, flexible grouping disrupts teachers and students' views of themselves and of each other. And I thought that was just, I was like, wow, Megan, you blew my mind there. But that's what it does. Like it's, students, breaks them out of the stereotypes and it allows teachers to see students and that they may think they know in a new light and realize that they, it's like kind of like a little talent scout. So I hope that our time together has given you some tools, some things that you can use right now, maybe some things to think about as you move on down the line, some things for now and some things for later. It's the kind of the last principle of differentiation, but it's a pretty important principle of differentiation, I think. I think it's what made things kind of work. For me, it was like that last piece that made everything kind of fall into place. And so that is my, and I think because it's so tied up in community too. And community is the foundation. It's where we started, and flexible grouping it's like that perfect arc that brings us back to community, but operationalizes it a little bit more. So thank you all for your time today together. And I am I'll send the slides that we used today to someone who will send it to you all.
You can send it to Marcy. Thanks, Christina. We appreciate it. You can send it to Marcy. I'll tell her they're coming.
Okay.
I did put the email, everybody, in the chat, but I'll be sending everybody a certificate and I will send you the eval link then. So just look for that in the next few days. And thank you all. And thanks. You gave us a lot of really good ideas and resources. So it is much appreciated.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for your time after like a long day. Thank you so much. It was so good to see you again. And I wish you a good rest of your year. Have a good rest of your year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, Christina, now you have to go off and get on that other link.
Yes. Okay. That is right. Okay.
And it'll be Angie.
Okay. All right.
But thanks. Great ideas.
Great
Just
scale.
so good ideas.
Good.
All right.
I have to go I have to hide all my elementary slides and unhide my secondary slides. So.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.